And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora. How are things going for you?
Very well, Brian. We're coming to the end of summer over here. It's the leaves are starting to change. We had a funny day the other day. It was like so windy and weird and blowy. It felt like fall was in the air. Leaves are starting to fall, change colors a little bit. This is California. It's not like those of you who live up in northern climes, but we do have a little bit of a fall here. Sacramento is called the city of trees, and we have an awful lot of trees. So we actually do have kind of a little change of color and things. So it's starting to happen. How about you? How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Weather's warmed back up, which we knew it would. It's going to cool down again, so we're just sort of taking it one day at a time and trying to enjoy when the good weather is there, enjoy it, and when it's a little too hot, we stay indoors. So you know how it is.
I do. I do very well.
Yeah.
Right.
So before we get started, do us a favor, hit
Yes.
that like and subscribe button. We really, really appreciate it. There's about 30% of you, 33% that do subscribe to our podcast, either on YouTube or here on, your podcasting, outlet of your choice. But about 33% of you. So we really appreciate it. Anybody that can hit that subscribe button, we really do appreciate. And we appreciate every one of you. So please like, share, comment. It'll only help. It'll only help us get to more people. So please do that. And if you want to get in touch with us, movingcombos@gmail.com is the best way. And you can always DM us or check out our Instagram. We're posting a lot more anatomies and fun stuff on Instagram. So moving convos on Instagram is how you can see us there. So you had an interesting, now that's out of the way. That's done. So you had an
So
interesting thought and topic for us to talk about today, which is, I thought, very interesting. So why don't you introduce it?
one of the things that I've been thinking about, so this is literally 20 years ago, the week that we're recording this, was when Al and I started Balanced Body Education, moved up to Sacramento, or on our way to moving up to Sacramento, and started developing the education program. And in that process, I've been thinking a lot about how those of us in fitness, which is a funny profession. Like it has certain qualities in terms of a profession. How you make your vision of what you want to have happen for your life happen in this industry. And there's a lot of ways to do it. And I was thinking about Brian, who has a very successful studio. I've had a successful studio, but I've also taken a very different approach in terms of being a promoter and an educator and running an educational program. And we just thought this might be an opportunity to have you think about what your vision is, where you want to go, and maybe use some of our experience to find some ways and to get there, tips and tricks to get there. So that was where I was headed with this, thinking about
Nice,
it as an inspirational moment.
nice, nice. Yeah, because something that I always sort of have to remind even myself is every area is going to be a little bit different. The fact that I'm on the East Coast, you're on the West Coast. When you're in the Bay Area, that's very different than if you were in Los Angeles or San Diego. So,
Mhm.
taking into consideration where you are currently, our good friend Nico, I remember when he was telling me about rental things in Cincinnati versus Washington, D.C. And I thought, oh my gosh, no wonder you can afford such a big space. Holy moly. In comparison, because we're paying, 3 times the same amount. So every area is going to be different. And yeah, so talking about, how we got to where we are and the choices that we made might be an interesting thing for people to hear, just as you might be making some changes in your practice or looking to move on, move out, change some things up. This might be a little bit of inspiration for that.
One of the things that we certainly noticed during COVID, which is now,
Mhm.
5 years ago, thankfully, but I don't know, 6 years ago, it's behind us, but it's not really behind us in some funny way, because I feel like in many ways, COVID broke the fitness industry and the Pilates industry, just changed it
100%.
radically
Yep.
on two sides. One, a lot of studios closed, a ton of gyms closed. There was like more bankruptcies in the fitness industry than we care to think about. And a lot of people just pivoted. They're like, okay, well, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to keep this going? And, Zoom was found. People now have classes on Zoom. And also, a lot of people said, hey, what do I want to do? How do I
Hmm.
want to be? How can I be more successful? How can I maybe work I'm not even going to say less because all of us work hard in
Mhm,
this industry, but smarter. How can I make a living that really supports me? And I think those are questions that a lot of certainly my peers and friends and people that I talk to are thinking about. Like, how can I do this better?
mhm,
And a lot of that starts with where do you want to go and what do you want to do? So, Brian, what I'd like to ask you is
mhm.
how did you end up starting the studio? Like, when did you decide I need to open a studio, and what was that process like for you?
It's interesting. I come from a family, you know, my mother, she had a studio in Hawaii, and there weren't many way back then. We're talking about in the 90s, 1990s people. I know it sounds like the 1890s at this point in our lives, but back in the 1990s, way back then, there weren't that many people who did what we did and have their own studio. Basically, if you
Yeah.
wanted fitness in any way, shape, or form, Pilates or otherwise, you needed to go to a gym. And so this was one of the first few, you know, started very small and eventually started growing a little bit bigger. Contraction, expansion occurs, you know, throughout the years. But seeing that and seeing that it could be done sort of gave me permission to try it on my own.
So
Uh,
you had a role model. You had a direct role
yeah.
model. And I would say, because I know that you started teaching because your mom, I think, had to go out for surgery and was like,
Yep.
hey, take my classes. So
Yep.
so you had a model and you had an unusually entrepreneurial person in this space at that
Mhm.
time, right? When
Yeah.
you're kind of trying to figure out who you are and what you're trying to do. That's an unusual situation, especially then.
And what was interesting is she was the one who challenged me because when I moved to the East Coast, I moved to Washington, D.C. And long story, followed someone here and broke up almost as soon as we got here. But I said, I'm going to give myself a year. I'm going to give myself a year because, and if it doesn't work here, I can always go home. I can always go somewhere else. So I gave myself a year and I was working at a gym, one of the top gyms in the area. And I actually spoke with my mom and said, I could never do this on my own. Look at all this equipment. I mean, it must cost a fortune. And
Ah,
all she said was, I'm going to challenge you for the next month. Don't use a single piece of equipment. Use a
ah,
ball,
good for
use like
her.
a regular step bench,
Yeah.
maybe movable bench, use
Yeah.
bands, light weights, use tubing, all of that, and nothing else. And if you can do that without touching a piece of equipment, you could do it on your own. So I thought, oh, okay, it's only a month. And there was a little nook, literally a little nook that nobody used except for the maintenance crew at this gym because the gym had a had a track around the upstairs. And at one end of the track was, I swear to you, it was probably 10 by 7 feet, maybe. It was
Uh-huh.
small. But I said, I'm going to set up shop. I'm just going to bring all my stuff here. And if I get yelled at, I get yelled at. I can always move, but I'm going to do this. And I set up shop over there. And over the next month, I asked clients, did they feel that the quality of what I was doing was better, worse, same? And for the most part, it was the same. They said, oh, I never noticed a difference. I kind of like that it's private, that we're not around all the other people. So I said, okay, that's good to know. So I got into a little bit of a disagreement with management about pay
As you do.
and
Yes, as you do.
as you do. And and I found out a lot of backstory about things. It was like, oh, okay. So someone's basically taking my money. Got it. Not just the club. So I just said,
Right.
I'm out of here. And I had an apartment and just said, I'm going to turn the entire living room into a studio.
Uh-huh,
And
okay.
when,
So so
yeah, that,
so
that was my first start.
you went home studio as your first step
First,
out.
yes,
And the reason I want to
absolutely.
bring that up is because that is really common. I have
Very
so
common.
many friends and colleagues and stuff who said, "Well, you know, I don't want to I don't want to rent a space. I don't want the responsibility. I don't have the money of that,
The money.
you know, but I've got an extra room or I've got a guest room or I've got a garage or I've got, you know, some other kind of space." So awesome.
Yep.
So how long did that last? How did that go?
It went well. I started out at one place, and that went well. And then I said, okay, well, I have the living room here, and my bedroom was another room. It was just a one-bedroom apartment in the middle of Washington, D.C. I said, all right, let's try and find a house. And because that'll give me more space, because I can use part of the living room as well as if I find a three-bedroom house, I can actually turn two of the bedrooms into a studio. So instead of going out and
Priorities, Brian, priorities.
Oh,
It's a
absolutely.
living
There's
room
no
and two
question what my
bedrooms.
priority.
That's a studio. And then I got a bedroom and a kitchen. That's all I really need. I
That's all
love
I
it.
need. That's all I got. Didn't matter. So slowly I started acquiring a little equipment here and there that I would need. Basically, I said, okay, what are my bare minimums? And
Mhm.
I set up shop. I got a house, Northwest DC, very nice area. My mom actually set me aside and said, listen, you need to be where your clients are.
Yeah,
So that
she's
means
right.
you're going to need to invest a little bit more in a nice place, in a decent
Yeah.
place
Yep.
where they live so that they're, and I did a lot of research. People don't want to go be more than 6 minutes out of their way
Yep.
between home and work to go to any type of thing.
That's the
And
thing. That's a
even
tricky
for
one.
me
That's a
right
good thing
now,
for you guys to think about. Yeah.
absolutely. And 6 minutes doesn't, I mean, it sounds like, oh, well, you can go pretty far in 6 minutes when there's traffic and rush hour and
Not in
things like
DC,
that.
you can't.
You know,
Not in
exactly.
DC, you can't. It could take you forever to go a block.
Exactly. And so I said, I really need to be where they live. So I took a look on the map and said, here's where the majority of my clients live is in this sort of neighborhood. Got it. Started looking, found a house, kind of run down. So it wasn't that expensive. Okay. And set up shop. And that was my initial, and then eventually went to another house, did the exact same thing. So I had two locations for probably a year and a half, and clients loved it. They came, no problem. But I'll tell you, one thing changed the way I thought and made me realize that I needed to go out and do an actual brick and mortar.
Mm.
Okay. And that's my wife,
Aha.
because we were just dating and not a big deal. But we started talking about getting more serious, and it was a realization that not everybody wants to be woken up at 5:30 in the morning by a client coming over to the house when
And
you're in your
clanking weights on the
pajamas.
ground. Right.
Yeah, and you want to come downstairs in your pajamas and just make
Yeah.
some coffee or something, and I've got clients traipsing in and out of the house. And that was sort of a realization like, that may not work. So that's when I said, okay, I found a partner of someone I worked with at the gym before and said, are you interested? I found this a place, got totally ripped off, didn't know anything about anything at the time, got taken advantage of like you do. My
Like you
my
do.
first
Yeah.
time into it, but you learn. And with each location, I learned a little bit more and a little bit more. And literally, I did the drywall, I hung the mirrors, I did
Yeah.
the flooring, the tiling, I built the place literally from scratch because the landlord wouldn't do it. So it was a process to go from big gym, small home studio, little bit bigger home studio, and then to an actual brick and mortar location. And that lasted 3 years. He and I split up, and I opened up my first larger studio where it was primarily just me, and I brought on some staff.
All right. So that's the bigger overview. I'm going to pull out a few things there.
Yeah,
The
please.
first thing is, one of the things that I find is really critical if you want to be successful as with this as a profession, not as a hobby, not as a part-time gig, not as something you cobble together with the rest of your life, is you kind of have to commit to it.
Hmm.
And your story about like, okay, I started in the gym and then I went to my apartment and I got a few clients there, and then I went to a house and got a few more clients there. You were committed. You worked
No
hard. I
question.
know. I know you worked hard because I know how that goes. And for those of you out there who want to do this, like this is not an unusual story. You
Mm-mm.
you take some financial risks. I'm sure your first house was a financial risk because I think for most of us
Mhm.
it is. So how did you get clients? How did you start out getting clients, and then how did that grow?
And that's the thing people don't think about. When you're at a large gym, you have a
Yeah,
constant influx of new people.
yeah, they're
And
bringing
word
them
gets
in.
around of who's good, who's not. So I had a constant list of people who wanted to work with me. When I went out on my own, some people joined me, as
So you brought
they
a few
chose
people
to
from your
do.
club, which is
Yeah,
typical,
not
right?
everybody.
Yeah,
A couple people,
right.
some people came, but
Yep.
I took a look at, okay, my overhead, my rent was so much. Okay, how many clients do I need to see per week just to make my rent?
Mhm.
Not food, nothing else, just to make my rent. And I thought, okay, I can do that. I can do that. That's bare minimum. Like you said, I was committed. I was not working another job, but that's always an option.
Right.
I'm not above hard work. So I thought I could, but I'm going to make this work. And as I sort of kept stepping up a little bit, it was okay, how much do I need for rent? What do I
Yeah.
need to make this achievable? Getting clients was always the hardest part. However, I will say this, when you ask your current clientele, do you know anybody who's looking for someone? Please let them know about me. People want to help. I think in general, yes, everybody wants you to be their secret. They're sort of like, I have a secret weapon here that's keeping me in shape. Yes, but at the same time, they want to help you out and they see you're a young entrepreneur, you're trying, you're struggling, you're doing
Yes.
your
Yeah.
best.
Definitely like to support you.
They want to support you. And I've had some amazing clients who said, look, whatever it takes, I'll pay for 20, 30, 50 sessions ahead. I don't care. Whatever you need, I will help out. And so I was lucky. I never used it. I never took advantage of any of my clients, but there was always a little bit of a fallback if I ever needed it. But
So I want to break in there for just a minute, Brian, because I want to say one more thing, which is if you're good, and this is an if, this is a big
mhm,
if. Because I've had more than one instructor kind of go, I've tried this and I've tried that and it hasn't worked and I don't know what I'm going to do and right, and they can't get clients. They can't. I
yep.
shouldn't say they can't get clients. I should say they can't keep clients.
Keep clients. Yes.
Right. And so one of the things I hear from you, and certainly was my experience as well, that I started my studio in 2000 or whatever. I was one of the few Pilates studios in the East Bay of, the Bay Area. And it was like, I had a few clients that I knew from the place that I was, and I had referrals from St. Francis where I'd worked for a long time. But basically, I did a good job. They told their
Mhm,
friends. I don't think I
mhm.
advertised ever. And this was the time when you didn't need to. I understand most of
Right.
you are in a very different space right now with a lot more competition and stuff. But it was like, if you do a good job, if you treat them well, they will absolutely show up and they will bring their
Mhm.
friends. So yeah,
Yep.
that was my experience for sure.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it was. And I rarely lost clients. They
Hmm.
stayed around for a long period of time. And that's been my throughout my career that in general, most of my clients have been with me for multiple years, not just months, but they stick around for a long period of time because I keep them safe. As we're getting older, we have things come up, shoulders, back, knees, all sorts of stuff. And so it's sort of an industry that keeps giving that I can keep giving to for the clients. So it's been very beneficial. But yeah, I haven't lost a lot of clients, which is very, very good. And that's a
Well,
key.
I also want to say that the other thing that I've that I am throwing a few little thoughts in here for you guys who are out there
Please.
listening. One is your commitment is what determines all of this. Like
Yeah.
when I was running my studio, I was absolutely 150% committed to doing exactly that. I was
Mhm.
committed to dealing with my clients. I was committed to learning. I was committed to really making this the most important thing in my life. I mean, that sounds a little intense, but that's exactly how it was. I absolutely was absorbed and completely dedicated to my craft.
Yeah.
And clients recognize that. If you're committed, they'll commit. Like I
Mhm.
really feel like there's an equal match there. I had one of my teachers, and I always tell this story, but she was somebody who came in with her coffee cup, sat on the reformer next to the client, talked them through the workout, preferred to talk about the problems she was having with her boyfriend or the latest movie, and she couldn't keep clients to save her life.
Yep.
And it was clear to everybody in the room that she wasn't committed to her craft.
Yep.
Right? This wasn't her, like she was a dancer, so that was her first priority. This was clearly like just a job. I come in and I do my thing. And you could feel it, right? So clients would come for a little while and then they'd leave because there wasn't that they knew she wasn't committed, and so they weren't
Yeah.
committed. And that's what you've always exhibited in everything you've done is that level of commitment and drive, and not just ambition, but skill development. And those are two different things. I have a lot of
Oh
people
yeah.
in this industry who are ambitious as heck, but don't actually do the skill development. And you really have done both. So I really, admire you for that.
There's something to be said, and this story came up when I was younger in my life, called Burn the Boats.
Hmm.
And Cortez, when he was trying to take over the Inca gold in
Yeah.
Mexico,
Yeah.
He had his crew burn his ships and said, look, we're either going back home on their ships or we're not going back at all. And they won. There's no alternative. I
Right. They
found
committed.
that you're committed. You're
You're
100%
committed.
committed. It's like, that's your choice.
Yeah.
And that was the commitment that I made for myself. Now, I was at a position in my life where I said, look, I don't have a family yet. It's
Right.
just me. I had a girlfriend, but primarily it was just me. So, worst case scenarios, everything failed. I'd be out some money, but I could
Right.
find another job and
Right.
I could pick myself up and go on again.
Yep.
Worst of worst situations. I'm not someone who believes in a lot of credit. I try and pay with cash when I can. So I thought, I don't owe much. I can do this. But again, it was that thought of I'm going to commit 100% to
Yeah.
what I'm doing. And when I
Yeah.
built my first real studio, it was a 100%. I signed a 5-year lease and thought, okay, I'm on the
I'm
hook
in.
now for the next 5 years.
I'm in. Yep.
And that's the difference for people who keep their toe in the water and just, I'm going to dangle my toe in here just a little bit. You're not committed. And it has nothing to do with, I'm going to advertise, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that.
Uh-uh.
It's, are you
Mm-mm.
committed to your craft, to your
Period.
clients,
Yep.
and also to what you do? I knew
Mhm.
my specialty is going to be more rehabilitative medicine. It's going to be
Right.
rehab exercise, medical exercise. That's my thing. And I dedicated 100% to it. And I've helped mentor a lot of people when they've told me that they want to do sports, specific training. Fantastic. Focus on what you're good at. Make your name at what you're good at and commit to that and become the best there is at that, because
Yeah.
people will follow you. But if you're a
Yeah.
jack of all trades, you're going to be picking up the pieces of the best. You're just going to be picking up the pieces of, here and there and everywhere. If you dedicate yourself to your niche, what you're very good at, and if it is Pilates, become the best you can. Educate yourself. People will recognize that, and people will recognize that you're good. And it's not just a part-time job. It's not just a fly-by-night fancy. This is your
Yeah.
career. I had a
And
brief story.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I Gentleman named Winston was one of the best hairstylists in Hawaii. I had very, very long hair. It was well past my shoulders. It looked like Slash from Guns N' Roses, wild afro, wild man from Borneo sort of look. And I went in to see him. I was scared to cut my hair because once you cut it, you can't put it back. And 45 minutes, I just sat there. I don't know. And I said, I don't know you and all this kind of stuff. And he says, son, and very flamboyant man, he said, I don't work at McDonald's on the side. This is what I do. And I'm the
Mhm.
best at what I do. Either you
Mhm.
trust me or you don't.
Yep.
And I have used that phrase with clients
I love
many
it.
times because
I
they
love
come
it.
in and they're like, well, why should I come to you? I say, this is what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm the best at what I do. And as you have that belief and you prove it to yourself and you prove it to them, they don't want to go anywhere else. They will put their trust in you and they'll pay the amount that you charge, because I charge more than other people do. So again, it's putting that trust in who you are and that belief.
And again, you have proven that belief, that you deserve that belief in you.
True.
You've done the work. You have
Yeah.
a kinesiology degree. You've done medical exercise specialist work. You've done a lot of research. You've done a lot of reading. You've done a lot you've gathered information.
Yep.
And I want to add this too. You've used your clients as your learners, right? As your instructors, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
So the other thing that I really find is in our world, everybody's individual. Every single person that walks through your door has their own unique weirdnesses of whatever they are, physical, emotional, mental,
Oh,
right? They
yeah.
just all do. That's just the nature of dealing with people every day. And being able to find that, get that connection, recognize how they communicate as quickly as you can, recognize what's
Mhm.
happening for them and how best to connect. And then having the skills to use that connection in their own best interest, not yours,
Mhm.
but theirs. That's just such a key, and that makes such, all the successful teachers that I know in almost any field, but certainly in our field, that's the key. They make the connection, and then they address the needs of that client in front of them. That's what keeps that client
Mhm.
coming back.
Yeah. I find that nowadays we're so used to instant gratification. And when someone goes
Yeah.
out on their own, they just expect that everyone's going to come to me. Everyone's going to know how good I am, but they may not have the experience behind that confidence yet. It's one thing to be
No.
cocky and confident, but if you don't have the experience to really back it up, people are going to see through that.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
And you do need to learn from every single client. I'm constantly learning. People are
Yep. Me
coming
too.
in and you're learning from every single person in front of you. And you need to. You need to take every person who's there as a learning experience
Hmm.
because they're going to throw a curveball at you that you've never experienced before. And
Yep.
how you deal with that curveball is based on all the experience you've had in the past, but also making the best choice and decision that day for whatever's in front of you. And then learning from that and say, this worked, but that didn't. Okay, I'm going to now, stockpile that away in that mental Rolodex we've got, you know, and that database becomes bigger and bigger and bigger over time. But you
We,
have
we
to be
talk
willing to put in the hours.
Right, and we talk a lot about assessment and reassessment. In this podcast, we've talked about client assessment and how you assess this and how you understand movement and blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah. But the other thing too is assessing whether what we're doing is working. Right. On the flip side of
Absolutely.
that is assessing ourselves. And if you've got a client for twice a week for 2, 3, 4 months, and you're really not making progress, you got to stop and go, why am I not making progress? You got to be honest with yourself and reassess, like, are we doing what we need to do or not? And if not, then
Mhm.
why not? Like, try to figure out another approach or different way to do things.
Yep. Yep. That's unbelievably important. I think the other thing is you have to be willing to put your own ego on the shelf because a
Yep.
lot of times when you are going by your ego or trying to impress them or
Mhm.
whatever, you're not
Mhm.
really serving the person in front of you. I have to constantly put my ego on the shelf and sit back and say, okay, what does this person need today? Because
Yep,
things come up.
exactly.
My last client, she just said, "Oh, I've been having this tweak in my back for the last, 4 or 5 days." "Okay, let's take a look at your motion. Let's take a look at what's going on." I said, "Oh, can you see how you're standing?" And, making some small adjustments. "Oh, that feels a lot better." "Great. Let's build on to that." But it was, again, assessing where they were today based on what they told me and making those small choices that that client needed at the moment. And I hate to say that's from 30 years of experience and being able to go on the fly and not being stuck in my own brain of, well, that's not what I had planned for today.
Yeah.
Or I learned this new exercise and you're going to do it whether they need it or not.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot in a lot of younger or newer, you know, professionals.
Mhm, exactly. Or in Pilates, there's definitely versions of Pilates, and it's like, this is what you should be doing. This is the posture you should
Mhm.
hold. This is kind of how things are supposed to be done. That's true in any physical training, right? There's
Yeah.
standards and there's um, agreements about what's better and what's worse. I mean, that's just the nature of the critter.
Yep.
But a lot of times those don't take into account the person in front of you. So I wanna pivot a little bit though, Brian, because you've been doing, again, running a successful studio for a long time. When did you first start to get into education and starting to do workshops and thinking that you had something to offer other instructors? What was that transition for you?
I was reached out. Dr. Mike Jones, who created the whole medical exercise specialist certification and whatnot, he reached out to a few people that he thought might make good instructors.
How did he know
Uh,
you?
I took his course
Okay. All right.
and he we developed a bond, and then I didn't hear from him for years, didn't see him, didn't hear from him, nothing.
Okay.
Uh, and he would come into town every now and then. He's from Washington, D.C. His brother and mother still lived here. So occasionally he would come. I might see him on the fly, occasionally. but he knew what I did, and I guess he followed up on that, and he brought in probably 6 or 7 of us to possibly teach for him medical exercise. And of those, I think only 2 of us actually taught regularly for him. I
Right.
think there were only
Okay.
2 of us. And that really taught me that I could teach
So
and that
once
I
again, you
had
had a
something to offer.
mentor that
Yes,
recognized it in you, right? It wasn't like you were like,
absolutely.
"I'm gonna go out and be a teacher." Somebody saw that skill in you and
Yep.
helped you to develop it and gave you a curriculum and gave you a structure to kind of move that forward with. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times people start with, like, through Balanced Body or through BOSU or whatever, becoming a master instructor first and
Right.
teaching that way. I sort of
Exactly.
jumped past that and was teaching on a little larger level.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I dove in the deep end. I had a knowledge base, and my background. I did stand-up comedy, I did acting, I did radio, I've done a lot of different things, so I'm comfortable speaking in front of groups. I have no problem with that. So for me, it became very natural, and I got on. All I had to do, and I tell people this, you get your foot in the door. And I did through IDEA, International Dance and Exercise Association, and I was given a chance to do one class, and the class did well. So I was invited to do another class. And my thing is, you never know if you're ever going to be asked to do another one. So make sure every time you're there, you give
It's as good as you can
100%,
be.
be as good as you can be. I mean, I want a mic drop moment every single time I go out on stage. I want to make sure that I have that standing ovation, that everybody wants to take whatever I'm teaching again. That's always my goal. I want to exceed expectation. And by having, I think, that goal in mind of exceeding and everybody's expectations of what I was doing really helped, because that's how you and I met, because you were teaching and we started talking, and then you invited me to teach with Balanced Body because you hopefully saw something in what I was doing. But
Yeah.
it was every time I went out there, I did a little bit more and tried a little harder and made sure that I was a little better each and every time. And I think that's the important thing, is not to rest on your laurels. Just because you've made it once doesn't mean they're ever going to call you again.
Right. Absolutely.
And there's always that fear inside of me. Funny enough,
This is my
I go
last
through that
performance.
every year in September. I look at my wall, which is to the side of me here, and I see all the things I've done this year. And I'm like, fantastic. And I look, and my next year is not there yet. And I start freaking out, thinking, oh my gosh, I got to fill that up. What's going to happen? And every year it does, it gets full, but there's always that fear. And I think that fear can be a good thing, because it does remind you that, hey, you got to keep working. You've got to keep striving. You got to keep getting better. If I had only had 2 classes and thought, oh, they'll hire me every year to teach these same 2 classes, I would not be where I am. So every year I'd come back with, how about this? How about this? I've got another class. I've developed this other thing. I'm doing this now. And I've now got a course catalog of 40 classes that people can choose from. That's the
Yeah.
difference. And every year I still bring up more. I sit down with the organizers and I'm like, okay, here's what I'm thinking about for next year. And they're like, wow, yeah, that's good. I said, okay, that one, no, this one, yes, I'll keep working on this. So for me, it's always about striving for what's next. I sort of joke that I'm a what's next person. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, what's next? What do I do? How do I top it? How do I move on? What do I need to do from here? And I think that's important to have, and not just sort of sit back and say, well, I made it. I'm here, because you're not going to stay.
Well, I wanna say a little something about that because, a lot of you guys out there have your own visions for your life in this career or your career and how you want it to go and where you want it to move or not move to. And one of the things that I really want to point out here is that the in many ways the most successful studios that I know really focus on consistency.
Mm-hmm.
That clients, this is my experience with them, all they really want is to know that you're going to be there every
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday at 10 a.m. Like once that breaks, once you're kind of like flitting about or you're not always there, your schedule shifts, that's when things get rocky. So yes, like continuing to grow, especially because Brian, you need to, like, you would get bored to death if you had to do exactly the same thing every day, as would I, which is why we've done what we've done. But there's other teachers that I know that are just like, I call them kind of the workhorses of our world. They
Mhm.
come in, they see a steady clientele every week. They have no problem seeing Alice every single Wednesday for the last 10 years and giving
Yep.
her their best. And that's the other thing is there's also teachers who really take this as, this is my steady state task. Maybe I'm an employee
Mhm.
at a club or I'm an employee at a studio, and I come in and I do my job. And then I go home and I don't have to think about the rent and I don't have to think about all the, the personnel issues and the taxes I have to pay and all that. So
Yep.
I really want to say that that's a very legitimate role to play, and all of us are
Mhm.
dependent on people who really don't necessarily have the ambition to move, quickly and change things all the time, but really do want to be that in the trenches every day at the studio.
Yep.
I mean, I did that for 16 years steadily. You've done that for longer than that. That still is the bread and butter of what we do, is showing up every day
Mhm.
with as much integrity as you can. Yeah. So
And
I
and
want to
that
bring that
builds
up
the
there too.
trust. It
Yes,
also builds the
exactly.
trust with the clients because that's so important
Yeah.
that you said it builds the integrity, it builds who you are integrity wise as well, which is
Yes.
so important and people don't realize that. So you
Yeah.
really need to honor that and realize that that's really what we want to do. But those workhorses, the good ones, are always working harder to be better.
Yeah, they are.
They're
Taking
educating themselves.
classes.
They take
Yep,
classes, they're
exactly.
talking to other instructors or
Yep.
whatever, but by doing that, it really changes who they are as a person,
Yeah.
and they do get better, and I find that that is so important. I can't tell you the number of times I've been at a gym or whatnot and start talking to some of the trainers, and I know a big conference is coming to their town in, the next 6 weeks or so. I said, "Oh, you going to that?" "Nope, nope. Why would I do that? I'm gonna be here working with my people because that's what I do." I'm like, "Yeah, but
Right.
taking one day to get better, you can serve
Yeah.
them so much more." So
Yeah.
there's a time and a place to be hunkered down, to be in the trenches, and there's a time and a place to go out and really expand who you are and make yourself better.
And one of the things that is certainly true, I mean, I've been, you and I have both been doing this for close to 30 years, is movement science has changed
Oh,
immeasurably over those 30
dramatically.
years.
Yep,
And so whatever you learned in your initial phase of whatever physical method you're doing, that has
yep,
changed. Perspectives on it have changed, thoughts about it have changed, research has changed wildly. So I do really encourage any of you to do education. There's lots of ways to do it. You don't have to go to a big conference. Maybe you go to a small workshop. Maybe you're really passionate about hands-on work, or you're passionate about fascia, or you love a particular kind of like using the roller or using a tool, right?
yep,
That's really where you can develop and grow and learn some new things and expand your understanding of how the body moves, because that really does also keep you fresh personally,
yep.
right? Both for you and for your clients.
No question, no question. And you should also just want to be curious.
Yeah,
I
that's what
find
keeps
that
me
that's
going.
so important. I mean, that's why you and I do this and how much we love talking to each other. I mean, you and I both, we would go to conferences and after we're finished talking, we'd sit there and talk to each other for hours before we really became friends. We just sit there talking. Have you ever thought of this? And oh, I was reading this. And have you thought? And just that sparking of interest with one another. We are such curious people.
Yeah,
And I find that that curiosity really is what makes people better because they want to know more. They want
yeah,
to push the
absolutely.
boundaries, trying new
Absolutely.
toys. I tell people all the time, I go to a conference and I'm an early adopter. It's like, oh, let me play with that. And not only let me play with it the way you guys have designed it, but let me figure out what I want to do with it
Exactly.
and play with it that way because what you got going is great, but I've got some other ideas now because oh, I think this is kind of cool. We can do this, we could do that, and have this kind of fun. That to me is so much more fun. And again, it's that curiosity that
So I want to
really
go.
is who makes who we are. Sorry.
No, that's why we do this, and that's why we keep doing this. Right? I always say, like, as soon as I give up on being curious, I'm done. Like, if
Yeah.
I don't care anymore, if I'm not looking and like going, what's happening there, there is no point in continuing to do this work for me. That's
Yep.
just my own particular take. So I wanted to cut back a little bit because I wanted to talk specifically about two things that you've said. One is how you become a presenter, how you move yourself up into that next step, into teaching teachers or doing workshops, or even honestly doing something useful. And I know
Hmm.
I'm a little pejorative on that, on Instagram or on Facebook. You have to figure out what's important to you and what
Hmm.
you uniquely have to offer to this community. Again, I started Body, Mind, Spirit, and I started Pilates on Tour, and I have programmed over 100 and I don't know 125, 130 conferences over the years, and I've seen a lot of conference applicants, and I've talked to a lot of people who want to be a presenter. They want to be on
Hmm.
stage. I get that. And what I said earlier about ambition and talent are not the same thing is relevant here, because then I
Yeah.
say, okay, well, what do you want to teach? Like, what's important to you? And very often I get, oh, well, I don't know. What do you think I should teach? And I
Hmm.
always come back with the same answer. I say, I can't tell you that.
Yep.
I said, if you want to be a presenter, if you want to come out and give something to this community and teach them something, you have to know what it is you have to teach. You have to
Yeah.
know what's important to you, what insights you've gained that you want to share. That's your job. So, if you are thinking about really moving up into that next level, as it were, really think about that. What's important to you? Not just, oh,
Hmm.
I can teach in Pilates world, I can teach hundreds in footwork and da. Great. Good. Fantastic. What's your secret sauce? Do you have special cues that you use? Do you use music in a certain way? Do you
Hmm.
have programs or protocols or flows that work really well? From Brian and I's perspective, do you have other parts of a background? Do you have a massage background that brings some hands-on work in, or a
Hmm.
psychological background? Like, what does that? Like, what brings you joy, and what skills do you have uniquely to make that happen?
I had a Pilates instructor, uh, who you know quite well, who approached me at one of our conferences and wanted to sit down and talk with me. And she's very sweet. She's very smart, but she said, "I want to teach with you. So
Mm.
let's create a class together. I want to teach with you." It's like, "Oh, okay, all right." And when we sat down, I said, "I just have one question for you. What do you have to say?"
Yeah.
And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, what do you have to say that's different than everybody else? Because you can always reiterate. And there are a lot of great master trainers out there who take the curriculum that they've learned from their master trainer courses and, forgive the term, but regurgitate it over and over again to new instructors, because we need that. New instructors need to learn how to become Pilates instructors. So whether you're learning, Mat One, whether you're learning Reformer or whatever, I said, that's great. I'm glad that you have that. But what do you have uniquely yours? What is your
Mhm.
voice? What do you have to say that's different, that can take you to that next level? Because there's this level of master instructor, which is fabulous. We need them. But I think there's another level where you're a content creator, where you have a voice, where you have a story that you just need to tell, and having that voice is huge.
And I really want to thank you for bringing up that distinction, because again, we have a lot of educators who balance body. I'm sure Brian's worked with many in other fields as
Mm,
well, who want to present but need to be given the curriculum, right?
yeah.
Given the book. And then they always, and this is what I love about, particularly the educators I've worked with, and yes, I love all of you, make it your own. Like, yes, I'm teaching
Yes.
footwork, but I'm teaching it from my perspective, or I'm teaching Bosu, but I'm teaching it with my personality and my flair and my kind of passion for it. That is absolutely valuable and important for the carrying on of our profession and the
Hmm.
development of our profession.
It's
So
necessary.
this is essential. It's not even necessary. It's essential. Like, without teachers to teach teachers how to do this stuff, we don't have
Yep.
anything. But I think your other point about if you're going to teach in a more, in a higher level situation, a national conference or a local workshop or whatever, that goes beyond just the curriculum that you've been taught. That goes like, what's your voice? So I want to make that
Mhm.
distinction a little clearer. Thank you, Brian,
Yeah.
for bringing that up. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and it's important. It's important. And once people do get to that level, you can really see that it's almost as though they take off in a different way
Yeah.
because they're not stuck on only teaching what they've been taught. Now it's like, okay, here's what I'm creating. Here's
Yes.
my that what I'm bringing to the table. And once you do that, then other people start noticing that, and you will be invited more to national conferences and whatnot because, oh yeah, that person, they have a voice. They there's something there. So I think that's really important that you have to know, what do you have to say and how are you different than everything else that's come before you? And I'm not saying having pink hair and light yourself on fire. I'm talking about what
Right. Actual
value that
talent,
you can
actual
give.
skill.
Yeah, beyond, you know, what everybody else has.
So one of the things that, again, my path is a little different than Brian's. Started at St. Francis, most of you know my story, and then ended up owning my studio, and then ended up starting a couple of Pilates conferences, and then ended up working for Bounce Body as their education department. And so for me, like I was in the trenches for solidly for 16 years, and working a lot. I wasn't one of those 10 hours a week people. I was usually 40 to 60 to 80 hours a week with clients or teaching teachers. And
Mhm,
there was a moment when I said, okay, I need to start teaching teachers. And some of that was because I left St. Francis and I was moving into my own studio and I needed to train the teachers at St. Francis to teach. So a lot of it for me was that just I need to do this. This is the next task. And I seem to be the person who's going to do this. So develop teacher training program. Um, and that was, that's another way to do that is like, okay, what do I have to teach? And I was teaching the repertoire, right? I was teaching footwork and whatever else I knew, but I was teaching it from a perspective of where I'd come from, which was St. Francis, which was medically oriented for sure, and had kind of a unique spin on a lot of the Pilates repertoire and things that I learned from that. So there's also that point where maybe you want to take a different track here. Maybe you want to think about what your role is in your community.
mhm,
I know people who have moved into being major mentors, business mentors for people because business is really where they live.
mhm,
Marketing mentors for people because that's their passion. And they love Pilates or they love fitness or they love personal training, but they also really like this other piece of things. Or organizations, running an organization, running a team. So the other way to think about this is what can you do for your community? This is a community, and we're kind of as I often
mhm.
say, a weird and unique one. There aren't a
Yeah.
lot of people that care about what we care about the way we care about it. Trust me. If you've ever been at a dinner party and you say what you do, what I usually get is guilt. Oh, I should start working out. Like, oh God, really? Let's not talk about your guilt right now. It's not, this is just what I do. I don't judge you for doing what you do. This is what I do. Um, but really thinking about like where else can you be of service. I think about my friend Tanya, who is a dancer, Pilates teacher, studio
Mm,
owner, and basically because of her commitment to her community, inspired me to start and to bring Bounce Body in on developing a teacher training program for Black instructors, a Pilates teacher training program for Black instructors because they were severely underrepresented in the industry. And so for her, it was, what can I do for the community? What is my bigger role here than just being in my studio? So that's
mhm.
another, if something like that's important to you, think about that. What can you provide, not just from a technical hands-on perspective, but maybe you have a role to play in terms of supporting the community or inspiring the community or educating the community, right? All those things are also ways to participate in some different ways and to have a different role in this world that we have.
And keep in mind that community doesn't mean just your just where you live.
Not at all.
Okay. It can be anything. It could be among other Pilates instructors nationwide. It could be
Or
among
worldwide.
fitness professionals worldwide. It could be But then again, it could be literally a subsect of your community. Like for Tanya, she has done so much in her community and brought so many people into Pilates who never would have before. And it's a movement. I'm going to say movement because she also does dance and things like that, but into movement that may never have been introduced to it before. That,
Right.
oh my gosh, she has done so much. So it can be as local as you want it or as large as you want it. And
Yeah.
especially now with the internet and
Yeah.
Instagram and all this kind of stuff, it gives you that opportunity to go as wide as you want or as, you know, small as you want.
Right. So that's just, there's so many ways to participate and to use other skills that you may have beyond your teaching abilities, to influence the world, to influence people, to remind yourself. Like, one of the things I love about supporting the community the way that I have over all these years is I love what we do. And I think
Mhm.
Brian and I talk about this all the time. What we do is very important. The role that we play in many people's lives is truly transformative. I'm sure if you've worked with clients over the years, which all of us have, you've seen those major changes in people, like personality changes and physical changes and
Mhm.
confidence changes, and you really see people move into themselves as they get more physically confident and physically fit. And we're, we're a light in this world. We're not stockbrokers. We're not lawyers. We're basically here to help people, and to
Mhm.
make them feel better. And so, however you do that, whatever role you play in that is critical, is really important. And don't ever forget that either as you move forward with things. And just think about, like, all the things we've talked about, all so many ways to participate in this. So give yourself some opportunities to think about where you might participate, what you might give, where your special role is, what your secret sauce is.
Something to keep in mind is that we all can add value to other people's lives. So you add value just being who you are to someone. And when you find that community, when you find who you do add value to, make it count. Make it count. There are so many people out there, and we doom scroll past these people constantly on social media who are there for the likes, who are there for the thumbs up or whatever it is. And they're doing crazy, wacky stuff that's getting
Mhm.
eyeballs, but they're not adding to the conversation and they're not giving value to the people who are actually paying attention,
Right.
except for a laugh or something like that.
Yeah.
You add value. Make sure that what you do is adding value to those around you. Make sure it's adding value to your students, to your clients, to whoever, you know, is there in your life. And if you do that and stay really true to who you are that way, you're going to thrive and you're going to do wonderful.
You'll be successful. You'll be
Absolutely.
successful. All right, my friends. Well, Brian, you think we've wrapped that one?
I think so. I think so. I think that's that was pretty good. And that all being said, I want to thank you, Nora, for what 3 years ago, actually longer than that, 3.5 years ago, saying, "Hey, I've got an idea. What do you think about starting a podcast and partnering up?" And it's taken us a little longer, but life also sort of gets in the way of, everything else because you can't just drop everything and say, "Here, I've got a new venture. Let's go." But things are moving in the right direction. And I think we are adding value, and you add value to me and to my practice and to my life. So I want to say thank you for joining me on this adventure every week because I really do appreciate it. I'm learning constantly and I continue to learn and want to. So thank you.
Well, that runs both ways. And now that we have, I always learn something from you because, again, Brian, I always speak this. We say we speak the same language, but from different continents. Like, we have different accents, which or dialects or something. And I also want to say thank you to all of our listeners, which, I know is
100%.
a small but dedicated group. But
Hmm.
hopefully this just inspires you and helps you to have a little something to think about during your week. I always use podcasts to kind of like get a little oomph, like, oh, there's a concept. And then I play with that concept for a week or two with clients or with the PowerPoints I'm building or whatever. And then I need a little more inspiration and I go to another podcast and I get a little clip. Or I spend my time with Brian and I go, oh yeah, that's now I've got to bring that thought into everything I'm doing. So hopefully we've done some of that for you. And, so like and subscribe, leave a comment, let us know what you're thinking. Let us know who you want to hear from. We've got some
Yes,
guests coming up for most of this next season. I think we're going to have a lot of guests coming up from all over the fitness world. And hopefully you'll find them educational and interesting as well.
absolutely. So thank you so much. We appreciate every like, every subscribe, every one of you. We really appreciate. And for Nora St. John and Brian Ritchie, we will see you all next week.
Bye, guys.